Welcome in your 3ds Max course. Before we start creating objects, let's understand the viewport. As we explained previously, the viewport has 4 screens. Each will have a certain view of the workspace. Top, front, left, and perspective are the default views when you open 3ds Max. We can change the viewport screen by hovering the mouse between the screens. As you can see, the cursor changed into a 2-headed arrow. You can drag them to maximize viewports on the right and on the left. To maximize the viewport on the bottom, just click and drag. If you click on the middle of the viewport, the cursor will change into a 4-headed arrow. So you can maximize the viewport. Also, if you don't like the layout of your viewport, you can change them by going to the viewport arrow on the left, click on that small arrow and choose one of the layouts that you would like to work on. For example, let's choose this layout. As you can see here, the top has been maximized and other viewport has been under the top view. I want to make this viewport as a perspective view, and the perspective one I want to make it as a top view. So changing the viewport, we will go on the top, we will click on it. We can see here a drop down list which says perspective, orthographic, top, and so on. Here each view has the shortcut on the keyboard, so the letter P stands for perspective. We will click on perspective. Now the view has been changed, but still I wanted to see all of the objects. So I would go to the wireframe and I will choose the first, which is the default shading. Now I can see the object, but I want to view it in perspective. So I could simply go to the box here and I will click on the corner that I'd like to present in my viewport so I could see all of my objects. Now let's go to perspective viewport and change it into a top view. Let's try to click on the shortcut, which is the T on the keyboard. Shortcuts are very important to memorize so it can speed up your workflow. Let's click on the letter T and let's change the default shading into wireframe. Let's go back into the perspective view and experience the other previewing options. When clicking on facets, we can see how object is divided into multiple divisions. When clicking on bounding box, we can see all of the shapes has been surrounded by a box. You can experiment all of the other showing methods. What is the important here is the default shading, wireframe, and edge face. When clicking on edge face, there is the surrounded edges between all of the edges of the object. You can experiment all of the other viewing methods in your own time. It goes back to the default shading. If you want to see the wireframe, we can click on F3. If we want to go back to the default shading, we will click F3 again. So the F3 toggles between default shading and wireframe. If we want to see the edge faces, we will click on F4. As you can see here, it changes into edge face. If we want to hide it, we will click on F4 again. And it goes back to the default shading. If you want to maximize our viewport, we can go to the right corner and click on the Maximize Viewport toggle. If you want to go back again, just click on the same button again. The shortcut of the maximizing the viewport is Alt and W. When we click Alt and W again, it will go back to our other viewports. Let's change our view into an orthographic view. When clicking on orthographic view, we can see all of the lines are parallel to each other. To see the differences, we will open another 3ds Max file that contains more objects. Here we can see a model of a bedroom with the perspective view and an orthographic view. As you can see, the perspective view here, when joining all of the lines, they are going to meet in a point, whereas in the orthographic view, all of the lines are parallel to each other. It is important to know the difference between the orthographic view and the perspective view. To navigate to the model, click on Alt and the scroll button and the mouse. This will allow you to view all of your models. You can also zoom in by scrolling in and out. Click on the scroll button to pan. Over here is the viewport. By now, we should have a clear understanding of our viewports. The next is the zoom extent selected, so it will zoom only the objects that you have selected. The field of view will change. This tool will zoom only these two objects that you have selected. Because we are in a perspective view, you can always change the field of view. When you click on it, the field of view would change. Here is the pan view. Orbit tools allow you to navigate through your object. And the next is the viewport toggle.